All right, everybody, welcome back to class. Good afternoon. There's just a few minutes till 12:45, so we still have a little time of just getting the stream established. A few minutes early, but welcome back. Five minutes till class time. Good to see you guys. Welcome to class. Just got 4 minutes until we start. Good afternoon, Ariana. Good to see you there. How's it going? Okay, guys, just a couple minutes to go. Hey, Paul. At this point, I know it's Paul when it says not applicable. So, but thanks for the reminder. Nice to see you again. You know, I had a little Spectrum outage this morning. I remember you were saying you had one the other day. It was kind of a hassle because I was, teaching some other classes this morning, and it was actually hard to deliver them because I had to switch to mobile hotspot. I had to use mobile data because the Wi-Fi router wasn't working, and it was like a whole ordeal. But we're in good shape now. I got it all fixed. I did troubleshooting and I talked to Spectrum and they had to reestablish the connection and stuff. Oh, whatever. Coldplay's a good group. I know some people find them a little generic, but you know, they're one of the great, I guess, bands of the last 15 years or something. People remember them. Paul, exactly. Yeah, the old, well, I mean, a lot of data plans are unlimited now, but if you've got one from way back in the day, then you probably have a cheaper package than some of us folks that just got started. Hi, everyone. Good to see you guys. Good to see you, Khan, Alina, and all the rest. The old Verizon one. I know the one you're talking about. That was a deal. I eventually had to get a new contract or something, and that's why I lost that plan. But I think they're pretty generous now, to be honest. Like, there's a lot of unlimited data plans now that are better. Oh, I know the one you're talking about, Paul. I know the time. Okay, guys, great. Well, it's 12:45. I'm going to let us get started. Thanks, everybody, for being here. And as usual, I really appreciate your continued attendance and engagement with the class. Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, it's like they're trying to bribe you almost. So, cool. Well, welcome back, everybody. And if you haven't yet had a chance to say hi or just anything in the chat, make sure to do that just so I have a stable attendance record that I'm just trying to keep on the side. And okay, other than that, let me just bring us back into our schedule of topics right now. One thing that's important to know, next Thursday, we don't have class. Next Thursday is so-called flex day. So I'm supposed to go to these different faculty development workshops on Zoom instead of teaching on that day. So we don't have class next Thursday. But the first homework is going to be due next Thursday. And at the end of class today, I'll talk to you about what that is. And I'm going to also send a Canvas notification to the class with the detailed instructions about that first homework. So you're going to have a week to do it starting today. But I can't really mention it until I finish with the lesson today because some of the things in the lesson today are related to that first homework assignment. So we have a plan. We're going to continue to finish some more notes on the topic of deductively valid arguments. And then I'll give you guys your first homework assignment. You'll be good for the weekend. And we'll see each other one more time on Tuesday before that homework is due. So we won't have class on Thursday next week, but you still have to submit that first homework on that day. But anyway, that'll all be made very clear as we go through the meeting. Okay, so let me just kind of bring us back through some of the early notes and take us to where we are at now. So the class overall started with a basic discussion of what it is to be a good critical thinker. And now you guys know that that's the kind of person who wouldn't believe any information unless it was based on some kind of good evidence or good argument. And they would not make claims to others that they couldn't defend or support with good arguments and good evidence. Thanks, Devin. Hi, good to see you and everyone else. Bad critical thinker is the type of person that will believe information and claims that are not based on good reasons, good arguments, or evidence, and doesn't have the capacity to present evidence and arguments to back their own views when they make those claims to others. Okay, we talked about argument. That's going to be a big focus of today's meeting, but let's kind of get that clear again. An argument is, who knows that definition one more time? The definition of an argument in the sort of formal sense of logic is a set of what things and what are the different parts of the argument. Let me know. An argument, a set of blank or more blank, where there's one blank and at least one blank. Okay, good. So Preston, a set of two or more sentences where one of the sentences is the conclusion and all the other sentences are premises. Exactly. So I don't know. It's a weird example of an argument, but I'm just kind of going off the top of my head. This is an argument towards this conclusion that dogs can fly. It's written in standard form. The way that an argument looks in standard form is that you have a conclusion placed at the bottom, and a horizontal line appears above that. And then however many premises, there has to be at least one, but there could be two as you see here, or more than two. But anyway, the premises listed above are the evidence for the conclusion. In this example, we have two premises. They also have to be divided on separate lines, so they cannot continuously be written on the same horizontal ledger line. Okay, so just an argument. This is a kind of a very formal sounding argument. In real life, oftentimes we make argument for controversial or contested claims. Like, say I was a lawyer trying to prove that like a certain person was guilty. I could say, well, their footprint was found at the murder scene, their blood was found there, fibers of their clothing were found there, and so we placed them at the murder scene. Therefore, I conclude that this suspect is guilty, you know. And that could be disputed by the defense attorney, et cetera, trying to provide reasons why this doesn't conclusively prove the conclusion. But anyway, that's what an argument is. The point of the argument is to show that the conclusion is true. When a statement is true, that means that it matches the actual facts of reality. For example, that that I'm wearing glasses, that Joe Biden's the president, that the moon orbits the planet Earth, that the Earth is the third planet from the sun, that the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776. So anyway, all of these are different examples of facts that are correct to the reality. They're statements, but they match what happened. And of course, not every sentence or statement is true. Like if I say to you that I'm 50 years old, it's not true. But I could say that, it's just not what really happened. Okay. And then belief, that's when a person thinks that a statement is true. So depending on what you consider to be the real facts, you form a set of beliefs. And sometimes we have different beliefs. One person thinks something is true. Another person says, no, I don't really think so. Take the case of the killing scenario. Maybe members of the jury believe this person's guilty, but members of his family who are, you know, love this person and would never imagine they could do it, they don't believe that they really are guilty. So the question, the statement, this person killed so-and-so, one person thinks that's really happened and it's true. Another person thinks it didn't. So beliefs can be different from person to person, but the objective facts just are what they are, and we try to get to the truth as critical thinkers. Now, we talked about conclusion, premise indicated words, words like therefore, thus, so, hence, those are conclusion words. Premise words, words like because, since, due to the fact that, given that. Different types of sentences, assertions, where there's a truth value, interrogatives, which are questions, imperatives, which are commands. And then the last lecture, we really spent a lot of time talking about the difference between deduction and induction. So let me ask some of you guys, what is the definition of a deductively valid argument? What's that? When and under what circumstances is an argument deductively valid? Let me see. This is a core concept of logic, so it's something I want to make sure we don't forget. Yeah, so let's see. Deductively valid, anybody? What do you think? Okay, Noah, you say if all the premises are true, that's part of it. But that's not the full statement yet. We got to say more. If they're all true, then what? Anybody can jump in, or just Noah if you want to say. Okay, good. Yeah, so below prove. If all the premises are true, then the conclusion must also be true. Yes. And yeah, that would be the right thing. You have to say something like must, necessarily, like, because it's not that the conclusion could be true if the premises are. When the argument's deductively valid, not to worry, Noah, yeah, but you follow me, right? So if the premises are all true, then in that case, the conclusion must be true as well, okay? Another question, everyone. What is soundness? What does it mean if an argument is sound? Let's try that. Let me know, what does it mean when we have a sound argument? Okay, Mateo, it's deductively valid and the premises are true. Then the conclusion must be true. Well, yes, that's still on the topic of deductive validity. So maybe you're commenting on that question, which is good, and that's correct. But one more thing. I don't know if you were trying to attempt a definition of soundness, because you're using if, then, and so it sort of looks like the definition of validity, but something in your answer also touches on this definition of soundness. But let's be very precise. Soundness, anybody, is what? It's a deductively valid argument with all true premises. That's right, Trevor. Maybe this is what you meant to say, Matteo. If so, not to worry. But yes, that's the right idea. It's a deductively valid argument where the premises actually are true. And just let's understand, you can have a valid argument that's not sound. You can have a valid argument where the conclusion does logically follow from the premises, but the premises are not really true. Tell me about this argument that we put on the board there. What's the status of this one in terms of the terminology that we just introduced? This argument is a what kind of argument? Looking at that, all mammals can fly. Dogs are mammals, and so therefore dogs can fly. It's valid, but it's not sound. That's correct, Matteo, yes. Why is it valid? Well, because, again, if you just look at the information provided by the premises, setting aside whether it's true or false, if you just look at the information here, assuming those pieces of information were true, then this, of course, would follow logically from them. So there's no way that it would both be. So that's a valid argument, but it's not sound. It's clearly not sound because premise 1 is not true at all, which says that all mammals can fly. As far as I know, isn't it just bats that are the flying mammals? It's kind of a weird thing, right? They're kind of like rats and stuff that fly around. But anyway, yeah, there's not too many flying mammals. Certainly not all of them can. And so therefore we have a valid but not sound argument. What if I said all birds can fly? And the dove is a bird, so a dove can fly. Would that be sound? Think about it mentally. I'm not going to write that one. But if I said or wrote, all birds can fly, and the dove is a bird, and so therefore the dove can fly. Well, it's valid, but yeah, it's not sound. It's not sound because of the case of flightless birds, right? You got the big ostrich and the emu and so on. Okay, guys. So, good, thank you. They can cry. Which ones? Birds? You're throwing me off, Paul. Whoa. But anyway, yeah. Ducks and chickens are birds. Yes, they are. Oh, the dove, when doves cry. Yes. Caught the reference a little late. Thanks. It's a reference to Prince. Okay, so anyways then, you understand now validity and soundness. What about another thing? Well, let me check your understanding of validity one more time before I move beyond that. How about this? Let's see. So what I wrote there is Obama is a man, therefore Obama is an American. Is this argument valid? What do you think? Paul, I see that you're getting a little shade there in the comments, but it's all right. Let's focus here. No, that's not the issue, Paul. An argument can have just one premise. So let's be very precise and clear about that. An argument can have 1, 2, 3, or any number greater or equal to 1, but it cannot have 0. So minimally 1 is enough. That's not the issue. Come on, Noah, not to get into all that. But yeah, my question is this. Is this valid or is it not valid? Not all men are American. No, Amber, we know that. So it's not valid. It's not valid because just being a man does not mean that you must be an American. There's all kinds of non-American men all throughout this planet. So, but look, are both of the statements true? They are both true, but it's not valid because there's a possible world where this is true and this is false. So the premise does not establish the necessity of the conclusion. Okay, so the conclusion is not guaranteed by the premise. Here's another case. What if I wrote up there, Joe Biden is older than 35, therefore Joe Biden is the president. That would also be an argument where the conclusion and the premise are both true. I mean, Joe Biden is older than 35, much older than 35, and he's also the president of the United States. But that premise doesn't establish the conclusion, right? Just being older than 35 is not a sufficient condition for being the president. It's a necessary condition according to the Constitution, but it's not like everybody that's older than 35 is the U.S. president. Otherwise, I would have had my term already. So therefore, that would be an invalid argument. I'm just mentioning that because you can have an argument which is invalid, but all the content inside is actually true. The question is not whether they're all true, it's whether the conclusion has to be true given the premises. So you kind of have to sometimes engage in hypothetical reasoning. You have to like imagine these possible scenarios. Is there any even imaginable situation where the premise is true and the conclusion is false? If so, then the argument by itself is not valid. So like in the case of the Biden example, although he is president and he's over 35, isn't it possible to imagine a scenario where yes, he's over 35 but not president? That's an easy scenario to imagine. Like in case he didn't win the election or whatever, then the premise would have been true and the conclusion false. So that's not a conclusion that's guaranteed by the truth of the premise. Okay, just a little bit of review and analysis on soundness and validity. Now I want to ask this other question. What about the inductive kind of arguments? If we have a good inductive argument, what are those called? What's the definition? Inductively strong. So what is an inductively strong argument, if anyone can tell me? Inductively strong argument. Different definition, slightly different idea. Still has to do with premises and conclusion and the idea of truth, but what do you know about that? The conclusion probably follows the premises. Fair enough, Khan, yeah. I would say in the more precise way that if all the premises are true, then the conclusion is highly likely to be true as well, but not guaranteed. Can anybody maybe throw out an example of an inductively strong argument that you can think of? Yeah, so if the premises are true, Amber, right, that establishes that the conclusion is very likely, but again, not 100% certain to be true. Can anyone think of, an example of such an argument? Let's see you write one out in the chat. Like examples that I gave you included, it's the sun's come up every morning for billions of years, so it'll come up tomorrow. My car has always started every time I've turned it on, and I've had it for, what, like 5 years. So it'll turn on when I start the car today. You wake up every day, you'll wake up tomorrow. I hope so, Trevor. But one thing I would add to your example would be a little bit more detail about the length of your life. I mean, I know by the obvious fact that we're in this situation that you're probably above the year of 18, so you've been alive for a while. But just the argument by itself should make that specific. Khan, you say, like a generalization, it didn't snow in Huntington Beach maybe, so it's not going to snow in Huntington Beach today. Right. But again, though, I would add some information about the length of time that the pattern has existed. That's important, right? Because without knowing that this is a long-standing pattern, there's not exactly a great reason to suppose that it's going to happen again. But if something has been happening a certain way for a long time, then that strengthens the probability associated with the conclusion. Now, Matteo, you're getting very heady, and this is a big topic and something that gets analyzed at a deep level by philosophers in the academy. You're asking, why is it likely that the future will resemble the recurring events of the past? Well, I got to tell you, that's a very vexing problem for some people. It's called the problem of induction. Like, what reason do we have to suppose that the future will behave in the same way as the past? Now, the standard answer is, well, because it always has before. But this, again, is using induction to justify induction. It's like induction has always led to reasonable predictions of the future in the past. But why should I expect that the predictive power of induction that we've observed so far is going to continue tomorrow? Like, Paul, you're saying objects in motion tend to stay in motion, and you referred to Newton's laws. Yeah, but what if Newton's laws stop being effective at midnight on February the 11th of 2021? So tomorrow, all bets are off. Those laws no longer operate. Now, here's what you're going to say. Well, they're not going to stop functioning tonight because they've been in function for so long. But now what you're saying is the record of their consistency through the past gives me evidence that they will be in effect tomorrow. But that's another piece of inductive reasoning. So like what justifies induction itself? Whoa, that's really tricky. It's sort of just like we have a brute reliance on the previous experiences and patterns of the past. Can we absolutely guarantee that inductive patterns and laws will persist forever? No. But without that, there would be no ability to predict anything. And so we essentially just have to rely on induction. That's a topic that gets discussed in epistemology classes, like how do you know induction really will always be there, or that the future will resemble the past. Paul, not all choice is relevant to physics per se, but it controls day-night cycles, time, which we have patterned into our behavior on generally. Yeah, but what I'm saying is the laws of nature themselves could be subject to change if they randomly shift radically overnight today. Now, they've never done it before, but tomorrow's a new day and you haven't been there yet. So how can you really conclusively establish that natural laws, physical laws, so forth will function the same way tomorrow? Yeah, tend to, but it can't be absolutely guaranteed. Nonetheless, I don't want you guys to become too skeptical about induction. I mean, we rely on it. It seems like it's a pretty safe bet that patterns hold. When we get to the topic of science, way later in this chapter 12, we'll actually come back to this a little bit, because one criticism of a scientific assumption of predictability in the universe is kind of the criticism that David Hume made, which is that how do you really know that induction and past behavior of the universe will resemble its future behavior? Okay, so yes, induction, guys, and some good examples. I gave you the case of the sun. Someone talked about waking up every day, laws of physics, etc. You presume that they will perform in the same way in the future as they always have in the past. These are all inductive reasoning. Okay, so then, now guys, we're going to move into a little discussion of what are some different types of deductively valid argument. And there's many different forms of deductively valid argument. Knowing the form allows you to generate infinitely many examples based on that form alone. So, like for example, if you had an argument which had this abstract form that says all A's are B's, and then the second premise says that some individual label X is an A, without even knowing what A, B, or X refer to, like without even plugging in values for those things, what conclusion is valid to derive from these premises? Question. Conclusion of this argument. If it's a valid argument, then what should be the conclusion? This says everything that is an A is a B, and the individual X is an A, so therefore X is a B. Yeah. Now, this is a form of deductively valid argument, and therefore, as long as you consistently plug in sentences for A, B, and X, you're going to get another example of a valid argument. No, Amber, it's not that X is not B. I mean, come on, look. All A's are B's. Here are the A's, they're all B's. If this thing X is one of those A's, then of course it falls within the circle of B, because everything within A is a subset of B. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense to you, Amber. This is the conclusion that it is, not that it is not. Okay, so like all dogs are mammals, Rover is a dog, so Rover is a mammal. That would be like one substitution for A, B, and X that would lead us to another valid argument. That one would be sound. But we could also generate valid arguments that are not sound through the same kind of form. Like say, all men can fly, R. Kelly is a man, and so therefore R. Kelly can fly. I mean, that would be valid but not sound because of the obvious falsehood of the first premise in that example. Okay, so this is a form. This is abstract and formal. It's not about a specific statement A, B, X. It's just any and all information that could be plugged into this would lead us to another valid argument example. Okay, so now let's really get into 4 types of deductively valid argument. Okay. Yeah, he does believe he can fly. You've heard the song, I guess, Paul. I don't know if everyone knows this one. So, Noah, you guys were just thinking about that special. But yeah, Not a fan of them musically or otherwise, but it's just a reference. Okay, so here we go. 4 types of deductively valid argument. One of them is called disjunctive syllogism. Disjunctive syllogism, okay? So first of all, for us to understand this concept, we have to learn what the word disjunction refers to. So the word syllogism is a logical term which refers to a deductively valid argument that has at least 2 premises. Oftentimes it's exactly 2 premises, but that's the idea. If you have a deductively valid form of argument containing at least 2 premises, it's a syllogism. This is a disjunctive syllogism because it involves what's called a disjunction. Now I'll tell you, a disjunction is just kind of fancy grammatical word for an either-or sentence. Disjunctions take this general form, the form either A or B. Okay, now in a statement like this, which says either A or B, there's 2 disjuncts is what they are called. So every disjunction has 2 component parts. The first disjunct, that's the thing that comes before the word before the word or and after either. And then the second disjunct, which follows to the right of the word or. So let me give you an example. What if I told you that I will either go for a run or lift weights? Suppose that's like my options that I'm considering when it comes to doing a workout or something. So if I say either I'll run or lift weights, what's the first disjunct? First disjunct of the sentence that I will either run or lift some weights. Kind of a softball, right? But let me know, what's that first disjunct of that disjunction, for example? To run, yeah, so it's, well, A would be the first part, but in the current example, it's the statement that I will run, I will go for a run. And obviously the second disjunct, the one that goes after that, is the other alternative, that I will lift weights. So in that case, A is taken by the proposition that I will run, and B is taken by the proposition that I'll lift weights. Those are the 2 disjuncts. Okay, so that's just a little bit of background on what a disjunction is. Now, let me show you the form of the disjunctive syllogism. Okay, so there's 2 premises that lead to this conclusion at bottom. And the first premise of disjunctive syllogism is just the disjunction. So that much is easy. It's either A or B, for some A and for some B. Now, the second premise of the disjunctive syllogism eliminates one of the disjuncts. So, for example, it could say not A. Not A. Okay, now think logically. If you have these 2 facts, what is the conclusion that follows? From 2 statements. Number 1, either A or B, but not A. So therefore what? What will be the conclusion? B, yes, correct. So like, I'll either go for a run or lift weights, but the track is closed. So I'm not going to go for a run, therefore I'll lift weights. It's pretty elementary, right? If you have 2 cases and they're disjoined together by a disjunction, it's this or that, and then one of those 2 things is somehow eliminated or negated, then it's the other thing that turns out to be the case, right? Like either Trump or Biden wins the election. Trump did not win, and so Biden won. I'll either get pizza or tacos for lunch, but the pizza place is closed, so I'm getting tacos. Yeah, so, you know, at any rate, guys, all this stuff are examples of disjunctive syllogisms. So another thing, the disjunctive syllogism is also sometimes called by another name. It kind of has like a less formal title that is another way of referring to it. And sometimes it's called the argument from elimination. So I'm just putting that here to the left in parentheses. That's AKA its other name. And the reason it's also called the argument from elimination is because in the second premise, we do eliminate one of the disjuncts. And so when you have two cases, one or the other, one of them is eliminated, then the other remains as the logical conclusion to draw. So far, so good. Like, suppose that there were two suspects in a crime, and you know that one of them did it because no one else was present at the scene of the crime. So it was either Jones or Smith, but a DNA analysis has ruled out Jones, so it must have been Smith, et cetera, okay? So the cases continue, and they can continue to be mentioned beyond that, but hopefully it's coming clear. Now here's something I want you to also know about the disjunctive syllogism. There's one other possible way that it can be displayed on the page. So another possibility is, suppose you have either A or B, and it is B that is negated or eliminated. What do you think then is the conclusion? So either A or B, but not B. So clearly then, therefore, what? Just let me see one time. What's our conclusion here in this form? It's either A or B, but not B. And so therefore, we conclude that what? Therefore, yes, it must be A, therefore A. So it doesn't really matter which of the disjuncts is eliminated on the second premise. The rule is simply that whichever one is eliminated here, it's the other alternative that is then the conclusion. Okay, so like I'll either run or go to the gym, but the gyms are closed from COVID, for weightlifting, so I'll just go for a run. Making sense, guys? Like, that one I hope isn't too tough. It's the disjunctive syllogism. So that's one of our four forms of deductively valid argument. Let me make sure that everyone understands a possible error. I've taught this class so many times that I know what are the most common errors that people will make when they report on this stuff. And so here's one of them that I want to try and make sure you don't commit this error. So suppose that this is the case that someone writes down, either A or B, and then they continue by writing A, so therefore not B. Okay, this is not valid, this is incorrect. So I'm crossing it out just so it's visually clear that this would not be a correct way of presenting disjunctive syllogism. The second premise has to eliminate one of the disjuncts. It cannot affirm one of them and then conclude that the other one is not the case. Now let me explain why that is. Because in logic, the word or, we use what's called the inclusive or. And in everyday speech and conversation, typically we think of the word or in what's called the exclusive sense. So let me explain that. The exclusive or of everyday speech is your common sense idea that if somebody says A or B, what they mean by that is one or the other, but not both, right? So like if I tell you, you ask me, what are you bringing in your lunch today? And I say, well, I'm gonna pack some stuff I've got at home. I think I'm gonna just put in there either an apple or a banana, okay? Either A or B, apple or banana. That's what's gonna be in my bag. Now, you might think that what that means is they're gonna either have the apple and not a banana, or the banana and not an apple. But with logic, we allow for the possibility that both are true when a person says or. So the only thing that really falsifies the assertion that you will either have an apple or a banana is if you literally don't have either thing. Okay, so like if I told you I would have an apple or a banana for lunch in my bag, and then you're looking inside the bag, and what I have in there is like a pineapple, then you're gonna be like, that's not true. You said you'd have either an apple or a banana, and this is neither one. Now, if you saw the bag and there was just an apple, no banana, then I spoke the truth because I said I would either have the apple or a banana. You saw just the banana, not the apple. Again, it was a true statement because my claim was I will either pack an apple or a banana. But what if you looked into the bag and you saw both things there? There's an apple sitting there and a banana both. Did I really say anything false when I claimed that I would either pack an apple or a banana? No. I would either pack an apple or a banana. I packed both. So from the affirmation of one of the disjuncts, it doesn't follow that the other one is false. But from the denial of one of the disjuncts, it does follow that the other one is true. So anyways, guys, just know that it's called argument from elimination for a reason, because we must eliminate the other disjunct before we can conclude with the alternative. Okay? So just to make sure that it's clear enough in your mind, somebody write down in the chat an example of a disjunctive syllogism. Would either imply an exclusive or? No. No, Paul. Either or is inclusive in logic. Like if somebody says, look, if you keep harassing me, I'm either going to stab you or shoot you, you know, and then they did both. It wasn't like they said anything false. What would have been false is if they neither stabbed nor shot the person, but did something other than both. Yeah, but I want an example though. Let me hear an argument from anybody that just has that form. It's not too tough. Just plug in values for the different parts of the form. So let's see what you got. In logic, if you wanted to have an exclusive or, Paul, you would have to say something a little more complex. You'd have to say either A or B and not A. You know, like I will either have one of the two things, but not both. Oh no, sorry, here's what you would have. Disjunction combined with the negation of a conjunction. So both either A or B, and not the case that both A and B. But anyway, no, and you say, I want a chai or a cold brew from Starbucks. They ran out of coffee, so you're gonna get chai. That's a good one. Do any words imply exclusivity? When you say the words not both, that implies that only one of them will be the case. So if I say to you that either Biden or Trump will win the election and not both, that would be the like full-blown statement that is equivalent to the everyday exclusive or. But you would have to add that additional statement at the end that says and not both. Because without having said that, it remains possible that both could be a way of satisfying the disjunction. Okay, Mateo. So or does not guarantee exactly one outcome. In logic, no. That's right. Preston, for lunch, either a burger or pizza. Pizza stop, not open till 5, so burger for lunch. Fair enough. I noticed both you guys are going with food examples. Anything else? Maybe not about choosing your options for food? Like how about two possibilities and you deduce that since the other one isn't the case, that one is true? Like trying to find something out. Like the answer to my question or the fact of the matter is that either this or that. Just another example, maybe one more, and then we can move on. But these are all good. It's just that I noticed they're all about food, so. Flipping a coin, heads or tails. That's fine, yeah. So the coin will land either heads or tails. It didn't land tails, so therefore it was heads. That would be a good example. Amber, I will either have a cat or a dog as a pet. I don't like dogs, so therefore I'm having a cat. Okay, good. And then again, your example is about choice. In a way, disjunctive syllogisms as arguments are usually not referring to one's choice because you already know what you're going to choose. So it's not like necessarily a deduction, but fair enough. Jonah, I will either go surfing or skiing tomorrow. There's no snow on the mountain, so I'll surf. That's fine. It's another case where it's like a choice, though. Like, do I like this or that? Well, I don't like that, or it's not available, so then I'll do the other thing. But those are all good examples, guys. I don't know. Suppose that someone was trying to determine the paternity of who their father is, and the mother doesn't know because it could be two possible people. So you say, well, there's only two people who I slept with, so it had to be either Jones or Smith, and then DNA analysis is performed and we eliminate that it's Jones, so therefore Smith is the father, right? I don't know. Okay. Yeah, well, in logic, it's a lot like coding languages in computer science and computer programming languages. So that's definitely correct. Yeah, either A or B and also not both. I mean, if I was going to teach you guys a more advanced logic class, we would learn technical symbolism as to how to express that. And I mean, it would look like this. A or B, this is a disjunction. The wedge stands for or. This tilde sign stands for not. And so not A and B. Sometimes it's the caret, or it could be the ampersand. That's what conjunction means. That means both. Wedge means or, conjunction means both. So like, Paul, just to be like fully formal, to say that it's either one or the other and not both, you'd start with the disjunction. That would be then conjoined, ampersand. And not the case that A and B. Like that would be the full notation given in a logical terminology. But anyway, I'm not going to insist on all that stuff for us. So for the moment anyway, guys, just know it is a disjunctive syllogism. It's an argument containing two premises that lead to a conclusion. It's a valid form of argument. All disjunctive syllogisms are valid, as long as they obey these basic rules. You have a disjunction, which says either A or B. Then you have a second premise, which negates one of the two, and whichever other one was not negated on premise 2 is the disjunction that then has to be the case. Okay, so good. We're then going to move beyond the disjunctive syllogism for now, and there's 3 more forms that we have to still learn. So these other 3 are members of kind of like a family. They're all members of the hypothetical syllogism family. Can there be 3 premises in this case, Matteo? Okay, good question. It's possible to have more than 2 cases that are disjoined, but for technical reasons, each disjunction has to have 2 terms. So like say that you had 3 possibilities. It's Larry, Curly, or Mo who stole the bike, right? And so investigators eliminate Larry and Curly, therefore it has to be Mo. In that case, yeah, I can see that you might have more than 2 premises, but the way of stating it as a disjunction would be a little complicated because the first premise would have to say either A or B or C in order for the disjunction to still have only 2 terms. That's correct, Paul. But yeah, so you could have in theory like a disjunction containing more than 2 items, and then if you subsequently eliminate all of them except for one, then that last one has to be the case. Yes. Okay, so good. Thank you for your question. Now I want to tell you all about the 3 forms of hypothetical syllogism. So these are 3 members of the hypothetical syllogism family. So let's first of all understand what hypothetical syllogism means. These are syllogistic arguments, so valid arguments containing at least 2 premises, but instead of being disjunctive syllogisms, where the disjunction is the main type of sentence involved, an or sentence, hypothetical statements are the main sentences here. No, I don't think we're losing Paul, are we? Well, maybe some of the stuff about CS257, but I understand what you're talking about in terms of like logical notation and stuff, but it's a little outside of our scope for the moment. Anyway, though, here we go, guys. Hypothetical syllogisms. What's a hypothetical? Let me tell you. So a disjunction was an either-or statement. A hypothetical is an if-then statement. Or sentence. I mean, should be consistent in the terms being used. It's an if-then sentence. That's what a hypothetical is. So here is the here is the form that a hypothetical takes. It's a statement of this form: if A, then in that case B. All right. Now that's called a hypothetical because it says suppose hypothetically that A, if that were so, like considering that to be the case, then in that case B would result from it. Okay. So if something, then something else as a result of that. Now, there's 2 parts to every hypothetical. So we can even further break down the structure of a hypothetical into 2 parts. The first part is the if clause on the left. This has a name, and it's known as the antecedent. So maybe actually, I don't want to be too far over there because then I might block it a little. But this is known as the antecedent. Okay? A-N-T-E-C-E-D-E-N-T, antecedent. That's the if part of the conditional. In this case, if A. The other part of the conditional, the then clause that is to the right, that's known as the consequent. Okay? Consequent. So hopefully that's legible. It says C-O-N-S-E-Q-U-E-N-T. So I'm going to put them even in the chat. Okay, antecedent, if part. Consequent, the then part. And the words, I think, are also revealing, because antecedent in English, it just kind of means what comes first, what comes before. Consequent calls to mind the idea of a resulting consequence. This is the consequence of this antecedent happening. So, okay, hypothetical syllogisms are called such because they each involve a hypothetical statement in them. So now, let me talk to you about the first member of the hypothetical syllogism family, because there's three. They're kind of, you could think of them as siblings. The first one is called modus ponens. Modus ponens argument. And it contains two premises that then lead to the conclusion below. So the first premise of modus ponens is just a hypothetical. Quick side note, hypotheticals are also sometimes referred to as conditionals in logic. So you'll sometimes see that terminology given. Conditionals, hypotheticals, two words for the same thing. They're just synonyms. Why are they sometimes also called conditionals? Because it's like under the condition, if clause that the antecedent holds, under that condition, then the consequent follows. Okay. So the first premise of modus ponens is just a hypothetical statement, a conditional statement, which says if A, then B, for some A and B. The second premise of modus ponens just continues by saying A. A is the case. So from these two facts, what conclusion would follow? If A, then B, A, and so therefore, what's the conclusion? Let me hear it from anybody that thinks they know the conclusion of this argument. B, exactly, Matteo. That's right. And so let me just plug in some examples here that I hope would make perfect sense. Correct, Con. Yes, that's right. B is our logical conclusion of the valid argument. So say I claim that if I run, then I would sweat. And then I run. Therefore, I sweated. Okay? Simple. It's like if something, then something else follows from it. Suppose that this thing, the if thing, does happen or is true. If so, then the conclusion is the consequent part of the first conditional. Okay? Let me give you more examples. If I'm in California, then I'm in the United States. I am in California. So therefore, I'm in the United States. And that's just another true modus ponens. If I drink this glass, then I'll be hungover. I drank what was in the glass, and therefore I had a hangover. You know, so it's just like one thing would be the fact that would cause another fact. And so from that antecedent event happening or being true, the consequent stated in the hypothetical then has to follow from it. Okay? If I am a professor, then I graduated high school. I am a professor, so therefore I graduated high school. Just there's so many examples, infinitely many that you could come up with. Let me see from any of you. Maybe one could try to write out their own modus ponens argument. Just, you know, it could be anything, just plugging in for A and B. So let me see if you can run it back and state your own example. Let's see. Okay, so Preston, if I can find someone with free time, then we will go to Vegas this weekend. Okay, good, but we're just getting started, right? So you got to continue through the rest of the argument. That's the first premise, but I'll hold for the rest. Let me see what you're writing, Jonah. If I eat this plant, then I will die. I ate the plant, so therefore I died. Yes, well, it would be hard to state this argument unless the ghost of you is the one who says so. But yeah, that's a fair example. True. Ian, if I'm a meteorologist, then I'm a scientist. I am a meteorologist, and therefore, thus, hence, follows that. Consequently, don't leave me hanging. What? You did. Okay, but you're going to still write it, right? What the conclusion is, just to make sure you put that in there. Trevor, back to you. If it rains and I don't have an umbrella, I'll get wet. It rained. And maybe, I mean, you might want to say the rest of the first part of the antecedent. It rained and I don't have an umbrella, so therefore I did get wet. Okay. And yeah, but Preston, your example, it would be easy to finish. It just, if I could find someone with free time, then we'll go to Vegas. I just contacted my friend Joe, and he has some free time, so we're going to go to Vegas. That would be the full stated argument. And good, Ian, I see your conclusion there. Noah, if I buy golf merch from the last drop, okay, like Golf Wang and all those guys, okay, my bank account would be in the red. I bought 5 items right now, therefore I'm broke and in debt. Yeah, that's a fair example, creative example too. Yeah, so good all around. Let me make some points though about an error that sometimes is committed here, and so that I can try to ward you off of that somewhat common error. So here is an incorrect version of modus ponens. Suppose that someone wrote if A then B, and instead of now affirming the antecedent, they affirmed the consequent, and they said B, so therefore A. That's not valid, and that's not modus ponens. So that would not be a correct response, you see. So anyway, yeah, why is that wrong? Well, just think about it. If I say to you that if I'm in California, then I'm in the United States, fair enough. But suppose that I add to that, I am in the United States, therefore I'm in California. That's not guaranteed by those 2 premises because there's 49 other states. So just because you're not in, so if I'm in California, I'm in the United States, just being in the United States doesn't establish that you're present in that one state. But of course, since the state is a subset of the nation, then anywhere within it is a part of the broader jurisdiction of the United States, okay? If I, let's see, if I run, then I will sweat. I'm sweating, therefore I ran. Now you might think that makes sense, but hold on a minute. From those 2 facts, it doesn't imply that the person had to run. What we know from premise 1 in that case is that running leads to the sweat. But we've not been told that the sweat in every case implies that you ran. So the person could have done anything else, get really nervous, help someone move a piano, and that's the real reason they were sweating. So it doesn't imply that they had to have run in order to do that. Let's see, if I fell off of the Empire State Building, then I would be dead. And suppose someone says I'm dead, therefore I fell off the Empire State Building. No, I mean, they could have been dead from any other number of causes. That's one thing that certainly would have killed them, but just knowing that the person's dead doesn't imply that that was the only possible cause. Okay, so modus ponens is its Latin, sort of very classical name that it's had for thousands of years. Sometimes a little less formally, people also call it by another name, and that side sort of AKA name is affirming the antecedent. Okay, affirming the antecedent is the name of it, and that it's called that because of how the argument goes when it's written in the proper format. The proper version of modus ponens is, again, if A then B, A, so therefore B. And why is it sometimes called affirming the antecedent? Because the second premise affirms the antecedent. So it's not a valid instance of modus ponens when one affirms the consequent. It has to be specifically that the left part, the antecedent part, appears on line 2, and then the conclusion matches the consequent that's to the right. Okay, Paul, the false logic of the lie detector. If they are guilty, they are nervous. If they are nervous, they sweat. They are sweating, therefore they're guilty. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, so maybe nervousness is one cause, a possible cause of sweat. But there's all kinds of other possible causes of the same. So just being sweaty can't be safely concluded as only deriving from the one source. All right. If Superman is exposed to kryptonite, then he'll die. Superman was exposed to kryptonite, and therefore he died. If, I don't know, if I study, then I will pass the class. I did study, and therefore I passed. You know, if someone says, if I study, then I'll pass. I passed, therefore I studied. That doesn't necessarily follow, because although study is a route to passing, I guess there's also cheating and all that other stuff. So you can't just infer that they studied from their passage. But you could, I guess, infer, if the hypothetical is true, that from studying, passing would follow. Okay, so many, many more examples can be given, but that's just our first look, our first taste of the modus ponens, affirming the antecedent hypothetical syllogism. Now here's another kind of hypothetical syllogism. I say that there's three, and so this is kind of like the sibling of modus ponens, and it's called modus tollens. Okay, now modus tollens, again, it's a hypothetical syllogism, so it starts off the same way with an if-then. If A, then B, for some A and B. But after that, it continues in a slightly different direction. So the second premise of modus tollens denies the consequent. And so it says not B. Not B. So now let's see if you can logically deduce the conclusion. From these two statements, what follows? Okay, if A, then B, but not B. And so therefore, something for sure follows from those things. Knowing that A would lead to B, but also B is not the case, yes, that tells us that not A. Okay? And I'll just walk you through some examples of this. Let's go with the case just mentioned of sweating versus running. If I run, then I will sweat. For me, that's true. I mean, I guess for most people it is, but I really get into it when I run. So anyway, if I run, then I'll sweat. And I suppose I'm not sweating. It definitely means that I did not run, because had I ran, I would have been sweating. So I'm not sweating. That means that what would have caused it also did not happen. Okay? If I fell off the Empire State Building, I'd be dead. And you can see I'm not dead. So one thing that didn't happen to me was falling off the Empire State Building, because in that case I would surely have been dead, but I'm not. So, if you know that the consequent is not the case, then anything that would have caused this consequent also must not be the case. Okay? Like another example. Let's talk about the geography sort of example. If I'm in California, then I'm in the United States. Suppose that I'm not in the United States. Well, then clearly I'm not in California either, because not being in the whole country, I can't be in a part of the country. So those are all modus tollens examples. Let's see from someone here if anybody can maybe present just a random example of a modus tollens. Modus tollens argument, two premises and then the conclusion. How would you write that out? Just plug in some information for A and B, and then let's see what you can come up with. I mean, like, I'll just keep spinning my wheels while you're doing that. But like, if I'm parked outside, then let's see. If I'm parked outside and it rained, then my car will be wet. My car's not wet, so it must not be that it's both parked outside and it did rain. Okay, so Paul, you say, if my car starts, I'll drive to work. Well, but you're getting the order a little wrong, because you say right after that, I walked to work. Well, okay, actually, that's not the main issue. The thing is, you don't have your conclusion. You just say, if my car starts, I'll drive to work, and then you say my car didn't start. So, I guess it is a little bit mixed up, though. The conclusion is the last thing, and the conclusion should be the denial that the car would start. So, like, if my car starts, I'll drive to work. I didn't drive to work, and therefore my car didn't start. Okay, I see what you're saying. I see what it's just written in a way that kind of is hard to read because it's not in standard form. But yeah, I get it. If the car started, then you can drive. You saying I walked to work is like your way of phrasing the denial that you drove to work. Yeah, and therefore the car didn't start. Not to worry. Noah, if I run, I sweat. I cannot sweat because I have a business meeting in 5 minutes, and therefore I won't go for a run. That's a fine example too. Yeah, no, you can't do multiple lines, I understand. But maybe what you could do, Paul, is just like number them. Like you could put 1 dot and then put the first premise, 2 dot, second premise, and then C, colon or dot, whatever, and then the conclusion. That would maybe eliminate some ambiguity. Okay, so then Trevor, you say if I heard a good joke, I would laugh. I didn't laugh, therefore I didn't hear a good joke. That's a fine example too. Yeah, so sorry about the little confusion at first there for Paul. Jonah, if I punch him in the nose, it will break. His nose didn't break, therefore I didn't punch him. Wow, so you must have a very strong punch in that case. Like every punch certainly breaks the nose. So knowing that someone's nose is not broken, we could certainly conclude that you didn't punch them. Okay, good. If I'm dead, well, this is a weird example, Ian. If I'm dead, then I'm alive. I mean, that doesn't make sense. If you're dead, you're not alive. So what you've written in the first premise is a little bit contradictory. But I mean, just following your example, if I'm dead, then I'm alive, I'm not alive. The conclusion shouldn't say I'm dead, it should say I'm not dead, okay? Because remember, the conclusion of modus tollens is the negation of the antecedent. So in your example, the conclusion is the same as the antecedent. It's not negated, so it's not actually correct. Okay, but those, for the most part, are good examples. Let me make sure you understand. Here's one error that people make in some cases when they try to state these forms. With modus tollens, and here's something, it has a separate name as well. So modus ponens, kind of alternative name was affirming the antecedent. The alternative name of modus tollens is denying the consequent. Denying the consequent, and why it's also called this is because of how the second premise does deny the consequent from the first hypothetical on line 1. Here's an error that sometimes people make on these modus tollens arguments. So try not to do this if possible. Sometimes a person's like, well, all I know is that the second statement is like a denial of something. So sometimes a person might say not A, and therefore not B. That's not correct. So this is invalid. Like if I'm in California, then I'm in the United States. I'm not in California. I'm not in the United States. That does not follow, because you could fail to be in California and be in one of the other 49 states. So that wouldn't work. Another invalid, erroneous version of this would be if someone just tried to say B and therefore A. That's also just wrong. But this kind of error is because the person forgot to make these negation statements. And so that would be a problem. Like if I run, then I'll sweat. I sweat, therefore I run. That's not correct. So those are errors with modus tollens. We don't want to make those errors. Just keep in mind that the format has to stay the same. You have if A then B, a hypothetical, followed by the denial of the consequent in that hypothetical, and then the ultimate conclusion is the reverse of the antecedent. If I study, I'll pass. I didn't pass, so therefore I didn't study. If I got the job, then I must have applied for the job, but I didn't apply, and therefore I didn't get it, right? So these are just all, different examples. Okay, so we got one more then, everyone. One more kind of deductively valid argument that's in the same family of hypothetical syllogism. So our last member of the hypothetical syllogism clan is called chain argument. Okay, so the chain argument, with chain argument, every premise and the conclusion, they're all hypotheticals. So it's if-then statements from top to bottom. And they're connected as though in like a chain reaction, like links in a chain. So here's how it follows. It goes if A then B, first premise. Then from there we continue in the second premise by saying if B then C. So, okay, tell me if you think you know what might be the conclusion, and here's a hint. It's another hypothetical. It's another if-then. But what's the if-then that follows from those two? Given A, B. And in case of B, then C. So therefore, if what, then what? What's the if-then on the bottom? We got an if-then to complete this form here. Well, no, it's not just C by itself, Noah. Remember, I'm saying it's an if-then statement. So, yes, Trevor, also Mateo, you got it. If A, then C. Okay, so let me walk you through some different examples. A person says, if I run, then I'll sweat. If I sweat, then I'm going to take a shower. So if I run, then I'm going to take a shower. That's it. The conclusion basically just connects the antecedent from the first premise with the consequent from the final premise on the bottom. And it just makes sense, because if this leads to that, and then that thing in turn leads to something even further, then if the first event happens, through this chain of events, ultimately C will be a result. It's kind of like, dominoes toppling. If A falls over, it'll topple domino B. If domino B topples over, it'll knock over C. So if the first domino falls, then the third one will down the line. Okay? If I study, then I'll pass. If I pass, then I'll graduate. So if I study, then I'll graduate. If I get a good score on my SAT, then I'll get into the college of my choice. And if I get into the college of my choice, then I'll get my bachelor's degree. So if I get a good score on the SAT, then I'll get a bachelor's degree. Just, I don't know, I'm coming up with different examples. One thing leads to another, which leads to yet another. And then in conclusion, we can say that if hypothetically this first thing occurs, then the third thing does as well. Let me ask anyone here, what do you think about an example? What could be an example of that, just plugging in some facts or information for A, B, and C? Let's see if you can just generate an instance of this form. Chain argument. Let's see who's got it. Wait for it. Not too long, hopefully. Let me know. It's going to have to be 3 sentences, okay? 2 premises, then the conclusion. And we just need some if-thens. Okay, so Jonah, here was what you said. If I wash my pants, they will shrink. If they shrink, they won't fit. But you're wrong, Jonah, with the last part. That's where I have to correct you, actually. What's wrong with your third statement? It's not an if-then. So that's wrong. And actually, I was going to mention this after I got some examples from you guys as the most common error. The most common error is to state it categorically, like A happened and then C, and so C did as well. But it's hypothetical. It's like saying if this were to happen, then in that case, C would happen. But we're not actually claiming that I went on a run. Like, right, if I tell you that if I run, then I sweat, and if I sweat, then I need to shower, the conclusion wouldn't be, so I'm going on a run and I'm showering. It's all about if. It is true that if I do that, then I will sweat, but I'm not doing it yet. I'm just sitting here talking about what would happen hypothetically if I were to do that. So the conclusion has to be stated in the hypothetical. What's the right conclusion then, Jonah? Go ahead, write it out. It's very close to what you wrote, but you have to correct it. If I wash those pants, then they will not fit. Exactly, good, thank you. And Trevor, if I order 10 pizzas, I'll have to go to the delivery man. Oh, sorry, I will have to give the delivery man $100. Okay. If I give the delivery man $100, my wallet will be empty, and so therefore if I order 10 pizzas, my wallet will be empty tonight. That's a decent example too. One thing about it, I guess, though, is that 2 of the statements that are within the hypotheticals are very, very similar to each other. You say, I will give him 100, and then you say, if I give him 100, my wallet will be empty. But that's fine. I guess, yeah, they're distinct statements, so that's okay. Good example, Trevor. Anybody else? Did we lose you, Paul? I thought you might want to jump all over this, but maybe it's clear enough. Mateo, if I eat a rat, oh geez, then I will get E. coli. And if I get E. coli, I will not feel good. So if I eat a rat, I will not feel good. Fair enough. That's a good example too. Okay, here we go. Prove. If mom's home, she'll do the cooking. If mom does the cooking, we don't have to order in. So if mom's home, then we don't have to order in. Okay, I like your example too. All that stuff is well and good. Rats taste gas. I mean, I'm not catching your reference, but hey, I'm sure they don't taste very good at all. Yeah, so blah, 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 blah. Yeah, these are all good examples, guys, and so I can't really think of much more to add here. Well, let me say a few things, actually. With chain argument, unlike with modus ponens and modus tollens, it's permissible to have an additional premise. You can have more than 2, basically. It can continue on indefinitely long. So suppose that in this case we actually had 3 premises, and the third one continues by saying that if C, then D. Okay. If A, then B, if B, then C, and if C, then D. So in this case, what would be the conclusion, if you think you know? Similar, but just now that we've added a premise, the stated conclusion has to change a little. And now what should it say, if this is our example? Just right there at the bottom, conclusion statement. Should it say, what should it say? right there. Let me know. The final sentence of this new chain argument. No, Trevor, actually. Well, oh, I guess I kind of see what you mean, because you're thinking if A or B, but we still have to like refer to the beginning in the statement. So not a problem, but yeah, it's if A then D, correct. Okay, so if I save my money, I can buy a car. If I buy a car, I can drive to school. If I drive to school, I'll become more popular. So if I save money, then I'll become more popular. I don't know, just random example. What I'm pointing out is that it's not merely limited to two premises. Many of them, some of them may have only two, but there could be 3, 4, 5, however many. In the end, though, the conclusion is going to summarize by saying that if the first event were to happen, then on that basis, through this chain of events, the final consequence would result from it. Okay. Yeah, so chain argument, guys. It's a set of hypotheticals linked together as though links in a chain. Like the next subsequent premise takes the previous consequent and transforms it into the antecedent of the current premise. And on until you reach the end. Then this horizontal line shows you that it's time to conclude, and you merely join the antecedent here with the consequent at the bottom. Okay, so that's really the majority of information that I had for us on today's lesson, but I want to now tell you guys about the upcoming homework assignment because it makes use of these hypothetical syllogisms. Okay, so in the book, and I'm going to mail this out on Canvas, so you're going to have a record of it in our announcements for the class in the announcements tab of our Canvas module, or shell, whatever they call it. So I'm going to notify you here, but also online. The homework assignment is this. So first homework assignment, homework number 1. Okay, so it's due Thursday, February the 18th. That's a week from today. Just deliver it to me as an email attachment anytime before the class time, pretty much. That would be the best. But I guess I won't be too picky if it comes in slightly later in the day. If it comes in, though, too late in the day or the next day, then I might have to deduct a little bit of on-time credits. So just try your best to send it to me prior to like our class time Thursday. It's not that much work, and it should be easy enough to do that on time. So it's exercise 8-3 in the book. That's on page 252. Okay, and it's part 1 of exercise 8-3. It's a set of lettered exercises A through J. Okay, so exercise 8-3, part 1, letters A through J, and it's on page 252 of the textbook. If anyone is using the 3rd edition, it's also page 252 of the 3rd edition. So this is the same info for either case. Can't miss it. Exercise 8-3, page 252. Now, here's the way that the homework works. There are 10 examples, and in these 10 examples, there's the parts of an argument provided by the book, but a sentence is missing. No Canvas submission, email submission. Email it to me at my email address, rvulich@occ.cccd.edu. There you go. You're just going to email it to my email address, which you see also in the syllabus, and that's shown on our Canvas page as well, my email information. Okay, but yeah, so I was saying there's 10 exercises A through J, and in each one, there's a statement that's missing. So there's like the parts of an argument, but some missing statement. Just so you know that in most cases, it's the conclusion that's missing. But in at least one case, it's one of the premises that is missing, okay? Now, it's all about the hypothetical syllogisms. So each of the arguments between A and through J is either modus ponens, modus tollens, or the chain argument. And so your job is basically this. You have to take the example written in the book, displayed in standard form, present the missing sentence that you had to add to complete the argument, highlight that missing sentence or circle it or place a star next to it so that I know which one you had to supply, and then write just what type of argument it is. And then in that case, you would get 10 points for that one problem, 10 problems, each worth 10 points. So you can get 100 points possible for the first homework. No, are you asking whether I like canes, like a walking cane or whatever? Or are you asking, maybe you misspelled the word canvas and that was what you meant to ask? Well, you can let me know, but I'll get back to that. So here, let me help you guys just understand the formatting of the homework by doing a sample problem. This is not one of the actual problems in the textbook, but they're like this, okay? Okay, so suppose that the argument given to you says, if I'm not angry, then I will smile. I'm not smiling. Okay, guys, suppose that you just had those two sentences given to you. O'Kane's chicken. Yeah, actually, there's one right next to me here in Long Beach. The thing is, though, I can never get in there because the line is 100% of the time, like around the block. So I would have to sit there and like listen to a podcast or something to get their chicken. But yeah, anyway, over here, conclusion statement, what should it be? If I'm not angry, then I'll smile. I'm not smiling. So let me know, what do you think should be the conclusion of this argument? Just help me out because, you know, you guys need to know this. If you don't, then you'll be at a loss, I think, on the homework. So therefore, you are angry. Okay, good. Now, if this was the example from the homework, right, then you would have had to add that sentence, and these two would have been given to you, and you would just like place an asterisk or highlight it to show that that's the one you had to add. And then you would tell me what type of argument is this. And this type of argument is what type of argument? Because you've got three options. You got modus ponens, modus tollens, and the chain argument. So hopefully not too bad. Which one? Yeah, the whole boomer thing. I mean, to really be an actual baby boomer, you would have had to have been one of the people born, you know, in the whole birth rate increase right after World War II. But we all know the reference. Anyway, it's modus tollens. Yes, modus tollens, this one. It's denying the consequent. And here's one thing about those modus tollens arguments that this gives me a chance to mention to you, okay? Notice how in the first premise here, the antecedent is stated in the negative. It says, if I'm not angry, then I'll smile. Now, not smiling is clearly the negation of will smile, but am angry is the reverse of not angry. So, like, if the premise has information stated in the negative, then when you deny it, it has to be stated in the affirmative. Okay, but that's modus tollens. Let me give you another example that has that same kind of feature so that we're all clear. How about, if I'm happy, then I will not yell. I'm yelling. And therefore what? Yes, Paul, De Morgan's law is a inference rule in sentential logic, yeah. Isn't it the law that says from the statement not either A or B, it can be inferred that if A, then B. Anyway, the conclusion, I'm not happy. So notice this. The second premise here denies the consequent because the consequent says not yell. So what is the negation of not yelling? Yelling. Okay, so like just understand double negation sometimes double negation sometimes is involved in these modus tollens arguments. Devin, what do you say? So the homework will not be using disjunctive syllogism. Yes, good question, correct. It will only be involving the hypothetical syllogisms. You'll be tested on disjunctive syllogism at other points in the semester, like on future quizzes and tests. This one's just about the hypotheticals, that's right. I was just trying to make mention of this because in the second premise here where it says I'm yelling, you might say, how is that the denial of something? Well, it is the reverse of not yelling as it is written in the first premise. So be alert to the presence of words like not or won't in the hypothetical statement that is part of modus tollens. Like, let's be clear, the statement that you're not watching a lecture is false right now. But what about the statement that you're not watching a lecture? Tell me, is that true or false, that currently you are not watching a lecture? Are you not watching a lecture, or are you not watching a lecture right now? Just answer my question one time so I'm clear, so I can see that you know what I'm talking about. Double negation speak. Yeah, so it's true that you are not watching this lecture. You are watching the lecture. So to the statement, I'm not watching it, that's not true. We don't often speak in double negatives, but I mean, they're logically permissible. I've heard sometimes people say, well, it's not wrong, you know, like, meaning it's not false. In other words, it is true. Okay, so that is the kind of stuff to think about with double negation. Some of the homework problems involve a couple of cases of those kinds. Okay, so anyway, that's it. You have your first homework assignment. When you do it, you have to fully complete these 10 argument examples. Indicate the missing statement, whether it's one of the premises or the conclusion. It's usually the conclusion in most of them. Tell me which of the three forms it is, and it has to be in standard form also. Keep that in mind. The arguments that are written on the page in the textbook, they're written in just ordinary prose, so like sentences that just run on from one line to the next. So what you're going to have to do is put it in standard form, meaning list the premises on individual lines, have the conclusion below, and then just have the horizontal line that separates them like that. Okay, so the areas where I could deduct points from any answer would be if you gave the wrong type of identification of what type of argument it is, like if it was modus ponens and you said modus tollens, you clearly would get points off for that. If you didn't write it in standard form, you could receive a deduction for that. I've had students before that just write the one missing sentence and then write the correct name of the argument, but you have to write the whole thing. Part of the reason for that is because it's not the conclusion that's missing in every case. So without you presenting it in the context of the full argument, I might not be able to tell whether you knew which part it was. Was it the premise? Was it the conclusion? Okay, so anyway, yeah, just get those completed homeworks. You can write it by hand and send me a scanned copy, or you can type it out and just send me a document like a doc file, PDF, Google Docs. I would ask you this though, if you do send me something through like Google Docs or whatever, make sure that there's no restrictions on my access. Sometimes there have been cases in the past where student didn't provide me with access, and then if I have to ask for it later, sometimes it's hard to track the student down. So I would prefer it if I don't have to like request access or anything. Just give me a PDF, a doc file, or something that I can easily open. Okay, so anyway, Devin, you're saying for formatting, can we list the premises with P and a corresponding number and the conclusion as C? Yes, you can certainly do that. I won't insist on it, but numbering the premises and designating which part is the conclusion is always a good idea because it keeps it clear. You can send a PDF of the document, yes. Okay. So I think we've pretty much covered all the items for today's meeting then. So we're good to go then. It's off to the weekend. Everyone have a great weekend. Let me know if there's anything you need between now and Tuesday. We'll meet again before this homework is due so I can check in with you guys on Tuesday, but just keep reading through the notes in the textbook, and we'll really jump into chapter 1 material next time. All right. So are there 3 forms only, modus ponens, modus tollens, and chain? Well, to be fair, there's a lot more forms of deductively valid argument than these, but we are only learning those 3, yes. So we are only responsible for knowing about modus ponens, modus tollens, and the chain argument for now. So that's correct. Okay then, Ian, do you have 4 negations? That's fine. I'm not watching the lecture. Yeah, so whenever it's divisible by 2, if it's an even number, it is equivalent to saying it affirmatively. But that'd be a very frustrating person to deal with if they were using 4 negations to say something affirmative. All right, everyone. So sounds great. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys next time. So I'm signing off. Have a good one. Bye-bye.